day of the year.
It is.
Love it.
I think this is gonna be our hottest summer in the Midwest. they
Is
were
that
saying.
right?
Yeah.
Or is that what we're trying to get toward here?
Yep. I've been trying to.
Yep.
You're not getting enough on yet.
We're all in our spots way early.
Oh,
There she is.
Oh, we got 3 minutes spare.
Tend you like to be here.
The kind of thing that's like probably the place where people.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
Probably about it. Yeah. You'll look up there, it's got the parking lot for like 10 cars.
Susie, I'm gonna go ahead and call it to order. Okay, great. All right. All right, good morning. It's 9 a.m. We're gonna call this meeting to order. First up, we're going to get through our public comment. We've got, I think, 7 speakers today. We've got Midavi Hayden kicking us off, Cynthia Berry McCarthy, and Ken Oliver.
Small comment. My name is Midavi. I'm a Cincinnati resident living in Clifton, just a few blocks away from the proposed dog park location in Burnett Woods, Brookline. I'd like to first amplify the voices of my neighbors and every Clifton resident I've spoken with about this proposed development. Each and every Clifton resident that I've spoken with, pet owners and non-pet owners, has told me they do not want the dog park built in Burnett Woods. Let it be known, please, The Clifton community members do not want this dog park built in Burnett Woods. The reasons I've heard, that you have heard expressed are many, it's conservation, lack of sustainability, it's forever chemicals, toxic materials, etc. Folks are thinking long-term because they are invested in the health of the woods, undisturbed green spaces. They know and understand efforts like this have historically proven themselves harmful, vital bodies of nature, like these woods. And hilariously though, most folks have also told me that they would of course use the dog. Take dogs there, adapt and concede to development because they feel hopeless at having their opinions heard, let alone respected. But this is how this kind of development takes place. Folks are ignored, they get along as best they can, and folks get displaced. Being closer and closer to devastating the ecosystems we depend on. This dog park is another inch of degradation masquerading as development. A slow and painful process of erosion. Please reject all incoming bids for construction, seriously consider this project.
Thank you, Midavi.
Thank
All right, Cynthia Barry McCarthy, welcome. We've got Kermit with us today. I welcome you to make sure Kermit's on the screen.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And besides, what can I do after I came to play for lady last time? So I'm Cynthia McCarthy, and I am not an engineer and I'm not a mathematician, but I did look over the bid sheets from the original to the augmented and compiled what best, to the best of my ability, what I saw as shrinkage in the plan. And I saw the plan shrink in dog run area, number of play mounts, number of trees planted, specifically starting with 9 and going down to 4. The area of shrubs and perennials, numbers of trash cans, mutt mitt stations, number of gates, depth of pea gravel, the loss of brick pavers, the loss of art, the loss of decorative stone seating, loss of decorative river stones, loss of flowering trees, lots of the things that was planned to make it beautiful. And I understand that you shrank it to try and bring it in under budget, under the 450,000 budget, but the one and only bid still came in at $566,076. And my understanding is that your plan is to try and shrink it further and or find more money. And I feel like every sign is towards doing something different, towards not putting this dog park in Brent Woods, towards putting a dog park in a different place, in an undeveloped place, towards looking at what the UC students did and presented with their plan, very well thought out, very scalable and transportable to take a parking lot or some other unused, already devoid of green space to make into a dog park. And I'm hoping you'll seriously consider that. It really looks like the universe is not in your favor in this project. And I just ask that you, at the very least, just pause and
2 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yes, Cynthia.
All right, we have Ann Oliver and then next Lori Weiss.
Hi, my name is Ann Oliver. Thank you for the selfless job that you're doing here, thankless job, I suppose I should say. I'm a board member of the Audubon Society of Ohio and former president of Cincinnati Bird Club and former board member of the Ohio Ornithological Society. And tomorrow, one of the best conservation state of Ohio is being buried. She died before the age of 65. The impact she had across the state was staggering. Most people have never heard the name of Cheryl Harner. She worked behind the scenes, also in a job where there were few thanks or few acknowledgements. However, she worked with people like Hope Taft. She was part of the committee to have native plants installed around the governor's residence in Columbus. Hope Taft said of her, of Cheryl Harner, I think of all the help you gave native plants and the boost you gave to their acceptance. Be nice to have a few native plants out here outside the building, by the way.
And I thank you for being a tall tree for us to rally around. You made a world of difference. Thanks so much, Pope Taft. I should have brought in the book about the governor's residence. It would have made a nice prop. I don't know how Cheryl Harner managed to affect so many wonderful changes in the state of Ohio, how she managed to save a huge tract of grassland north of Columbus that has bobolinks, these little yellow and black and white birds that make a sound like R2-D2 from Star Wars, and go up and down, and she saved this huge tract. Give me a 10-second warning, would you? But she did. I wish I would have asked her, how did you speak to the hearts of people? Did you give them silence? Like, you already have 4 dog parks within 5 mile radius of Burnett Woods, and what the money could be used for habitat restoration for 15 seconds. Okay, anyway, in summary, let's bury this dog park idea, just like we're gonna bury lovely Cheryl tomorrow. Thank you again for.
Thank you, Anne, for that tribute to Cheryl. All right, we've got Lori, and then welcome back again, Sherry Frost. Hi, Lori.
I'm Lori Nice. Hesitated to come and speak because I don't remember all the facts about the dog park itself. I'm here really to speak for my friends, which are the trees, several people here, and you may or may not know my friend Corinna Shanti Miller, who speaking of burial, I was at her burial in January. She passed away. This issue was very close to her heart. She lived very close to Pleasant Valley. She used that space as her yard, and she invited people to tea parties, community circles. I think we're ignoring the already vibrant community use of that beautiful natural space that doesn't destroy an Ohio Audubon Society important bird area. You know, trees, they provide the air we breathe. That area, when you remove it, will only be sustainable in that form for what, 8 to 10 or 8 to 20 years. This is a 150-year-old sanctioned protected area that right now isn't harming dogs or birds or people, but forest bathing, going out into nature, it boosts our immunity system. It builds up our natural cells against cancer. It reduces anxiety, it lowers blood pressure. 2 hours out there under those trees will have an effect on your system for 30 days. I do this forest bathing, and I just want to say that Corinna's son, Paul, after she was buried, said to me, I really hope they don't do this. I really hope they don't temporarily, make a space where you could renew an already developed space somewhere else. Please don't take that.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
We have Sherry Frost, and then Susan Cohn, and then Terry Smith. Welcome back, Sherry.
Hi, I'm here in opposition to the current dog park. You should know. I went to the Rare Book Library and I found some amazing pictures of Pleasant Valley from 1905. And it made me think of all.
Looks like you brought this to share with us. We'd love to see that.
I was thinking of all the people who have come before you that have fought to protect this space, and we have it because of them, and we've inherited it. And it's all of our space. It's not just one group of people. And as it is now, we can all use the space in a fun way. But I'm here because I love Burnett Woods and I love our parks. And I know you do too, but we see it differently. And maybe if I can invite you to come with me to Burnett Woods and we can walk together and we can show you what is so magical about Burnett Woods that you wouldn't want to do this to her. As you can see, we've been at this for a few years. I've only been at it for 1.5 years, trying to convince you to move this to another location. But I just want you to hear the hearts of the community. We love our park and we love volunteering and we love getting our hands in the dirt. And we want you to love it too. So thank you.
Sherry, I want you to know I walk through Burnett Woods every Saturday morning, sometime between 6 and 8. So maybe I'll see you there.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Susan and then Terry.
Hello. Hi, Susan. My name's Susan. I live in Clifton. I live on Innerwood Place with my husband, my two children, my dog. We love Clifton. We've lived here for about 8 years now, and we've always lived in walking distance of Burnett Woods. So I've experienced so many wonderful things there, from the Saturday morning yoga class there, lots of music experiences, playgrounds with them, the concrete slide, which our grandmothers enjoyed, which is a really neat thing to share today with my children. We've gone bird watching. We see plants there, the nature pavilion, the lake, all of it is so wonderful and such a wonderful asset for our community that provides a safe place for people to come together and enjoy nature. I was shocked to hear that we were considering adding the addition of an artificial turf that we know has forever chemicals that can pollute our waterways, our soil. It also has the potential of destroying natural habitat for our pollinators, which are so essential to the future. Animals, plants. So I do hope you consider these things when making this choice. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Susan. And Terry Smith.
I live in Quarryville. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to like what I have to say and probably will ignore it, just as the park board has ignored opposition all along. Starting with the bait and switch of using the community engagement specifically worded for the Denor site to justify going forward with Burnett Woods, a decision the park board was very well aware would have organized and immediate opposition. Then the park board announced that decision only by putting it in the meeting minutes. Technically appropriate, but morally surreptitious to hide the actions from this organized opposition. I'm beginning to believe that Denor was never the real choice. It was the worst choice from your own research, but it was used to avoid honest and authentic engagement about Burnett Woods. This chain of events unfortunately gives credence to the claim that Burnett Woods site is being used as payback for having stopped other development that some park board commissioners had supported. Or maybe it's just that people who are neighbors and friends of some park board members, they are worth doing due diligence for, but the rest of us not so much. This isn't even the worst example of the poor leadership. Your mission is to conserve, manage, sustain, and enhance parks' natural resources, yet you are naive enough to believe that manufacturers who are being sued by 30 US states attorneys and has already had a $12 billion settlement against them are telling you the truth that there is no PFAS plastic grass. And plastic grass obviously is a heat sink, and as we experience 90-degree weather, and worse in the coming years, how can you stand by this extremely poor decision? These comments.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks.
Okay, that concludes our public comment. Thank you everyone for taking the time this morning to come and address the park board. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for walking the Burnett Woods on Saturday.
I hope to see you there.
You got binoculars?
I do have binoculars. I have many pairs of binoculars, none of which are ever with me.
I'll ambush you sometime.
You'll have them. You'll have them. Okay. Have a great day. All right, we've got meeting minutes from last time. Thank you for these very succinct minutes. They get straight to the point of the actions taken by the park board. Any comments on this before we make a motion? Motion? We have to roll call since Phyllis is on. Okay, we do have to roll call votes today since we have a virtual commissioner. Hello, Phyllis, by the way.
Hi, folks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so we had a motion. Who was that?
So moved.
So moved in a second.
Second.
Great. It will roll call that vote.
President North,
Yes.
Vice President Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Castellini,
Yes.
Callum,
Yes.
Commissioner Nye.
Yes.
Great. All right, Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, this is the fun part. Hopefully we don't do these too often, but it is going to be fun. So thank you. such a long, for such a long career with the park board. 35 years, you said, right? She started out as admin, it was rec staff, and then eventually an admin.
No, horticulture.
Horticulture, but then you were an admin tech for a while.
Yeah.
And then moved back in, eventually was running all of our east operations. Was about to go to waterfront, and then instead took over Explore Nature for the last 7 to 9 years.
Yeah.
It's run Explore Nature and runs all of our summer camps and all of our naturalists and all of our 6 nature centers. It's just been an outstanding. Beloved by lots. There's gonna be more than a couple tears shed tomorrow. I should say tomorrow at 2:30, going away party at Avon Woods Nature Center. But it's my pleasure if I can get it up.
Wow.
This,
Wow.
I guess, Lifetime Achievement Award. Just a generation of helping many Cincinnatians enjoy our parks, enjoy nature, and enjoy just everything. Thanks.
Thank you. Wow.
Would you like to share any highlights of your 35?
Oh my gosh.
years?
I didn't prepare anything, but
That's okay.
thank you for acknowledging the long life I've had with parks. So, I have done almost every division in this department, so, except planning. Never got to.
Not too late. Not too late.
I did.
Got plans this afternoon?
So, so I've just had a long and wonderful career at parks. I mean, I told Jason, I'm like, who does that anymore? Stays at one organization for 35 years, but I have really enjoyed it. I've had a lot of diverse opportunities within the department. And just, it's been really a stabilizing force for me with a lot of lifetime challenges. So that's been good for me and for my family. It's been wonderful. So
Any favorite projects that you look back on and have such a sense of pride? They all blur together, don't they?
they kind of do, and I really haven't thought of that right now. One thing that I'm really excited about now is something that Joel's working on, and that's the restoration of California woods. So that'll be a great project once that gets initiated. So.
I think Andrew wants to official.
Oh, okay.
Awesome, appreciate it.
Congratulations, Jennifer.
Congratulations.
Oh, great. All right, thank you. You never know where those go when they get sent to the city. You know, like,
Yeah,
It's
they
good, or-
right to me.
great, excellent. Wonderful. Joel, you're up.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
If it's all right with you, I would just go ahead and start with the action item, which is Sinton. Bringing this before you to right the ship on a pretty big contract that's been open for 2.5 years or so. As you all are well aware, that contract initially consisted of all the Ludlow design for Crystal's replacement building at District 5. Deal Road, which we thought was where initially biochar was going to go, and then everything that they're doing at Sinton in the building. So after 2 years and Deal coming in well over budget, we've righted the ship, worked with KZF to utilize those funds to take Sinton to a level that we didn't think it was going to need to go. Initially, it was only budgeted through design development and costs. Now it's all the way through construction administration after design. So we're bringing an amendment before you today to this contract in the amount of $36,500. And that does 2 things. It allows KZF to continue with detailed site design, which was not included in the original package, up to and including potentially a second version of the Taj Mahal close to where the initial service building is right now. Those things are added in with this contract, and we've asked KZF to add a little bit more money for a potential reconfiguration of some of the office spaces to potentially accommodate more than one team, not maybe just the east side, maybe some of facilities folks utilize that building potentially more than it could have been to save costs since we're spending we know we're gonna spend so much money on this building. We're gonna try to accommodate more than one teams if it's possible and feasible. So we've asked them to explore that with a little bit extra fee. So we actually asked them to add that 13,000 additional dollars in there for that you all see. So I'm coming before you today to ask for $36,500 to amend that contract to allow KZF to complete full design on Sinton, including the site, and stick with us through construction administration and oversee the contract. We've also extended the time for this. We don't want to come back with expired work order amendments like we're seeing and have seen in the past. We're pretty much got most of that cleaned up, but we've added a 30-month timeline from right now through design that should get us completely done with construction. That's why we're asking for this today.
Well, when do you expect to commence construction?
Get into construction, Molly?
Commence it, yes.
I would say the way everything's going, we should have design, we should have construction documents by the end of this summer, September, we'll have everything. It depends on funding and when fundings are released and how all that shakes out, but we could be in construction as early as late this fall, November, December of this year. Certainly doing some of the site prep. Some of it's already begun. Dave has cleaned a lot of the boneyard that we've had up. Joe Fisher on the West team, a little shout out to him. He's done a heck of a job from everything I hear. Cataloging, coordinating everything out at Deal Road in the lower section, not where we were going to develop, but keeping stock of some of the things we have, granite pieces, many leftovers from projects that we certainly may and will use, not throwaway stuff for sure that needs to be protected and cataloged. So he's done a lot of that. We're taking everything that is at Sinton right now in the area that will become parking. All of that stuff is going to essentially Mount Airy right now to make way for all that. So some of that site improvement has already happened. Dave Boutel's team has already, there's quite a stockpile of logs there. They take the big, pretty big diameter chunks of stuff that they take. That's kind of a boneyard for that stuff too. So he's in process of getting a tub grinder to come in to get that site cleared, because that's where some of our probably temporary trailers, if that has to happen, and or temporary staging, no matter what the case, is going to take place in that spot. So getting the site ready is already in progress at this time.
We just got $1 million in the city budget to add to this project, along with the 1.2 we'd set aside in our infrastructure. So actually, the city council just approved additional $2.2 million. We had set aside $900,000 from our last year's capital budget. So we're over $3 million of funds secured for this project. At the end of developing construction documents, we'll get a pretty detailed estimate, which aren't always as good as they used to be, unfortunately, but we'll know about where we're at, hopefully by the end of summer. And then that'll allow us to proceed with talking to the administration and city council about potentially additional funding in the closeout budget, which usually is passed in September or October.
And how much will it take?
Currently, we're thinking around 3.6 to 4, but we will know for sure. We won't know for sure till we bid it, but we're going to have a much better idea at the end of summer.
So there was $1 million in the city budget, 900 from our budget,
Mhm.
and we had another
1.2.
How much?
1.2. So it's 900 last year,
Okay,
1.2 in our infrastructure rehabilitation dollars this year. And then an additional $1 million in what they call an exemption, or like a special project. So we're up to 3.1. And then we also are going to be able to do the same thing we did with biochar and we're hoping to get an advance from the revolving loan for energy efficiency projects that will access those infrastructure rehabilitation, Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, lots of I's and lots of R's and acronyms. The IRA tax credits, so that could be 40% of whatever it costs to put the solar power on and to run the 3-phase or to any potential like car chargers, or any energy efficiency projects could be eligible for that 40%, which would be an additional $200,000 to add to the kitty.
do you know if the solar project will be capable of providing all the energy to the building?
In fact, we think the roof at Sinton's so big that we currently don't think we'll be able to cover it all with solar, because there's a limit to how much you can put back into the grid. We're not allowed to become, just Duke Energy doesn't allow us to become a generating facility. There's a whole other level, I'm sure, of regulation. And so we're going to have to limit what that is in order to just produce enough energy for what we use there, but we'll more than take that off the grid.
But we'll have a battery, so we'll be able to store energy.
They will let you, rough numbers, they let you produce 125% of what the site takes, what it takes to run all that stuff. For us, the question that we're exploring right now is what is the site? Can we call Eden Park the site? Because that's different than calling just the Sinton Operations Center the site. So working with OES a little bit on that and those definitions, as Jason alluded to. One thing, Molly, KZF, the coordination of all this electrical with that wasn't in the original either, and that is included in their updated scope for the 36,500 too.
So if I'm right, Joel, that means like this building potentially could be part of the site.
So we're
Right.
metering, there's like
Yeah.
6 meters up there right now. It's convoluted how it is. So we're in conversations with Duke of how to simplify that. So we can meter at one point, which may include this building, may include other facets of Eden Park. We're trying to expand that as much as we can. We met with Malink Solar 2 months ago, just in their shop to kind of see and get a gauge of how much potentially we could get, how much potentially we could cover. We know that Sinton, the roof, is bigger than they will allow us to do. But we're going to try to cover as much of it as we can and utilize as much of that power within Eden Park as we can, if we can convince folks that that is the definition of what that site can be. So that's where we are right now. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I'm not exactly sure how those are written, but we're certainly trying to maximize how much power we can use.
It also makes it an interesting potential location for electric vehicle charging. So I don't know if anybody's seen them, but the city's recently added like 25 electric vehicles. We've got several of the Ford Lightning electric vehicle F-150s, it's like, yes, trucks. And I just saw for the first time the other day, Ford's electric vehicle is a Mustang. It doesn't look like the Mustang of my generation, but it's like a little mini SUV. And I saw one of those go shooting down. It's for Department of Transportation Engineering has them.
Oh, yeah.
I think Buildings and Inspections as well has got some of those. So we're seeing more and more electric vehicles come into the system. We don't know when we'll get those for parks, but eventually that could be a spot where we're doing that as well, which also adds to our draw, cuts down on our use of gasoline, obviously.
We'll talk of Teslas.
But I think it's fair to say that the Sinton building itself will likely be at least a 100% offset from the solar generation.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully some more depending on definitions of math, but that's.
We'd only have to cover half of the building to generate 125% of what the individual site would. So as we cover the whole thing, that's a whole lot more electricity that could potentially be run through this area.
Well, and we've been talking to the city about how to incentivize departments to do energy efficiency projects. Currently, the way the budget works, they kind of take what you spent last year and then they give you a little bit of an inflation on that for next year. And that's kind of starts the budget process. And then you make trade-offs there. So if we take Sinton off the grid, well, then the next year our energy bill will be zero, which means the following year we will get zero plus inflation. And so that'll just disappear from our budget, which is good for the city overall, but doesn't incentivize us to do that, doesn't give us any payback. So we're having conversations about if there's some way to like split that or to give some sort of a credit towards other capital projects or to finance new things. There could be ways that we could then open up some of those. Currently, let's say our utility budget a year is 200,000 for the whole system, or what, that's a number off the top of my head. But if we took that down to 100,000, well, what could we use that 100,000 for? Could that be another person in Joel's shop to help do more projects? Could that be, an electric vehicle? Could that be, that could, we could decide what to do with it, but it could become all kinds of different stuff. So we're trying to figure out ways to be, help in that conversation. But Sinton's going to be, just like Ludlow was, District 5 Police Headquarters, the police department was like, we're throwing our hands up. We're out of use for this. People thought it couldn't be saved. And Joel and his team, Chris McGee, Andrew Campbell, and others did an amazing job of restoring that building, bringing it back to now people are jealous of it and wish they were working there. Sinton's going to be the same thing. When we're done with it, it's going to be a jewel of taking an old building that was built with one thing in mind to be, to be just a utility shed basically, and turning it into this operations center that's going to be energy efficient. It's going to be really special. So we're hoping to really set an example here for the whole city.
I know you like when I go down the path I'm about to go down, but one thing we've talked about, at least for the 3 years that I've been on the board and certainly in the time that you've been here, we've got millions of dollars of deferred maintenance. Very difficult to take our eye off of deferred maintenance because there's so much to do. And while we're addressing deferred maintenance, suddenly we have a retaining wall that collapses or a road that's now going down into a creek. And these are must do's, right? Whenever there's a safety issue, it redirects everything that we do. But I don't want us to lose sight of our opportunity to become a real mission-based park system where we have key priorities of being, for instance, a net zero park system. So that every time we're looking at a project where there's energy consumption, we're identifying those opportunities to make it a net zero facility. Or we're looking at a recycling or waste program that gets less of the trash that's collected in our parks away from our landfills and maybe even recycled or composted on site. These aren't easy projects, I understand, but if we do have, with our commitment to conserving natural resources, this really is all part of it. So in any case, I'm thrilled that Sinton is that's a big step toward a mission like that. And it's a key responsibility that we have as parks people.
That's absolutely right. I agree.
Great.
Y'all have any more questions on this one?
I did just want to give you one mention that we did a project for REI and it's, a platinum facility. And they put a tank in the parking lot that collects all the rainwater from the gutter systems and the parking lot runoff and recycles it into their toilets. So there's
Gray water.
Yes, so they have a whole gray water system.
Just studying that in the Grand Canyon a few days ago.
Well, I don't know that the payback exactly makes sense for the investment made on the gray water system, but again, it's their dedication to having minimal impact on the natural environment.
For sure. If you're in remote places, I've been thinking about that a whole lot. Like
Yeah.
where we can't run, 2,000 feet of water main or something, or certainly sewer for no reason. Like we see what it takes with alms to put back 800 feet of sewer through, 20-year growth forest. It's not going to be sustainable everywhere in our park system if we decide that there are places where we need to add restrooms where they currently aren't. So very much, how do we use that gray water? How do we tank this stuff so it's a clean it out once a year? Sometimes that maintenance makes a whole lot of sense versus just putting in infrastructure for no reason. Serving natural resources and not tearing up places just to get something we can do much more efficiently.
Brent,
I'm thinking that same way, Commissioner. Thank you.
for instance, as we're starting to think about what's next at water, so obviously we've moved green space out there, biochar is coming. But green space has a lot of watering. That's one of their big missions is they go out and they water all these spaces. And so is there an opportunity to collect water there? Because the other challenge we have with water is it's got a very tiny water line, right? Like 3/4 inch, 1 inch. Yeah, 1 inch, a 1 inch water line, which I'm not the engineer, but that's not enough to do the amount of watering we'd like to do there. So they have to water the greenhouses at different times and different cycles, which isn't a huge deal. We have enough water. But as we grow our operations there, one of the things that's in kind of our dream deck, because you got to dream first, right? And then you see if you can pay for it. But can we capture water there? Can we capture water there and store it? And then can we use that to then water everything in the greenhouse and to fill up our trucks and tank it, take it back out? One day, Joel and I got down a path, and I always love these moments where the whiteboard was cleaned off and Joel starts drawing me how to pump the water up and keep the water up top and then load the trucks. And you had a whole thing going like in 3 minutes. And I was like, all right, this is gonna be fun. So it's definitely something we're thinking about because that starts to become the payoff.
For irrigation is, as long as you can keep it clean within a tank, which there are certainly ways to do that, very greenly, it's awesome. Ann's team may fill up 250-gallon tanks in the back of their F-150s 3 or 4 times a day.
They're electric.
Eventually.
Lightning, that's right. They pull in, you basically have a 2-inch pump that pumps a 250-gallon tank full in 3 minutes, and then you ride off and are, watering the many pots that we have across the city over and over. So those things just capturing water we're losing, or it's causing us problems, having to divert it, or, as we talk to Springfield Township, retention is still on the table as we put in a road and things like that. That may absolutely be how we accommodate that. Capture everything off of all the roofs and say, hey, every time it rains, we're capturing 3,000 gallons of water, and then we're turning around and using that almost immediately in the summertime to water all of this with 0 loss and 0 energy waste. So those are the kind of things that are exactly where we're trying to think.
Very exciting. Well, I know the whole team is motivated for these kind of projects. And it takes the motivation because they're very challenging. So. All right, I think we need a motion to approve the Sinton change order
Move approval.
in a second.
Second.
And we'll roll call.
President Hart,
Yes.
Vice President Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner McCallum,
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, we got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Nye.
Yes.
All right, that is approved.
Thank you. I had a few on my list I want to point out to you, some of the ones that I highlighted, just to let you know, big projects that are moving forward. Number one I had to bring to your attention was Smale Lot 23. Just want to let you know, THP returned 95% plans to us early last week, I believe, while I was out. Haven't been through them with a fine tooth comb yet. We have a couple weeks to do that, but we're essentially at 95% plans. When Chris McGee, the architect team, and myself review those, we'll get it back to THP and expect essentially bid level documents by the middle of July. That's what we're thinking right now. So can bid that certainly very soon. Trying to get 100% on that one. Want to let you know that one's moving. Biochar, lots of things have happened since the last meeting that we had. Number one, we have a design contract and KZF is already working through many of the problems and challenges on this project. We've had an equipment meeting along with a kickoff meeting already. The equipment is certainly the critical path item right now. Sizing the boiler, sizing the organic ranking cycle machine, which is the energy generation machine. Those things are critical to make sure that we're meeting all of our demands. We're talking with our engineers that we have on staff, the engineers that design the equipment. And actually, we have a meeting at 1 o'clock today, which may result in us sizing down a little bit the ORC. The boiler has been a question for almost a month now. We've been working through that. We think we're very certain at this point that going with a little bit smaller boiler may be more energy efficient for us. If you oversize the HVAC system in your house, the HVAC system runs for 2 minutes and it may take it from 80 to 60, then it doesn't run. So if you do the same thing here and oversize your boiler, essentially it means that you have to put so much energy in to get all of this water hot when you're really potentially only using a fraction of that energy to do everything you need to do on the site. So those are the questions right now, making sure that we're not oversizing this equipment and putting undue burden on either our staff or our equipment. That's the gist of what we're trying to do right now. So just keeping you up to date on that. Those are the things that need to go into production first. KZF is also on site this week to do soil borings in the area where the biochar facility will sit to make sure we have structural fill under that that's sufficient to support that building. All that's happening right now. Like I said, a site meeting today to hopefully finalize these equipment decisions, not losing anything in generation. We've asked that question certainly. Can Crystal still run as much material through this and produce as much char? None of that changes. This is all on the energy side of that. So the production side is not affected whatsoever by these decisions. Only the energy and maximizing the efficiency of the energy side of this is what's in question. Just so you all are aware, it's likely going to result in a savings, potentially tens of thousands of dollars, maybe up to $100,000 in this situation to size those down with no loss and still be able to produce all of the power that Jason said in the presentation a few months ago that it will do. Those are the questions that I will make sure are answered before we enter into those things. So keeping you aware of that. Any questions on biochar? There's a million moving pieces on that. We're moving towards some public engagement this summer with Springfield Township. Been in contact with them recently, even to start to lay that schedule out. We think that initially there'll be a public engagement meeting talking through many things with the neighbors, the road from North.
And when is that meeting?
That meeting has not been set yet, Mrs. Castellini, but I believe it will be towards the end of July, mid to end July. We are shooting for plans both from KZF and ourselves to the level to have that.
Thank you.
It might be the end of August.
End of August.
We have to submit our plans 30 days before the zoning hearing.
That is
And we want to do the engagement 10 to 15 days before the zoning hearing. So we kind of like, people don't forget about it, right? So if we are shooting for this currently, and again, they might surprise us and get done earlier, but currently we're hoping to have to be at the September zoning hearing meeting, which would mean the engagement would be early September.
Which means the community meeting would be in August.
Be early September.
Okay.
So the zoning meeting would be mid-September. Yep.
Any questions on biochar? Okay, a couple more just to keep you updated on that were highlighted in the report. Everybody's treehouse, we received the initial report from Schaefer. They gave some really good recommendations on how to fix some of those structural members that are deteriorated now from the ash trees dying. We've asked them for details on many of those recommendations. The last 4 or 5 that appear on that list required an additional detail. We asked them to build those out. So the next step will be Megan Construction is already on this job. Will be pricing based on those details. I'm not certain that we'll have those in July. Schaefer is working on 2 or 3 things on the fly for us right now, so we keep them crazy busy, but we certainly hope to have costs, if not by July, by August for that meeting for you all to consider. So that one's moving right along. Washington Park, I wanted to bring this to your attention. We added a small change order to this project months ago, actually years ago. You approved $250,000 for upgrades to Washington Park under 242000, those infrastructure rehabilitation funds. We did two significant contracts from that. One was the irrigation system upgrades to the north side. That's what this concerns. The other one was Adlita coming in and doing $60,000 in pavement repairs. There were several trip hazards. All of that stuff has been replaced. Stairs that were broken, all of those things are done. This small change order reflects a couple things that were different on the north side of the irrigation than the as-built drawings. There are 3 sleeves. There are many sleeves, 20 to 30 sleeves that go under all of the different pathways and walkways to get irrigation to every bed. 3 of those sleeves out of the 24 were not found or unfunctional from the existing 15 years ago. So the new ones had to be bored in. Nothing changed with anything, but that is what we're adding a little bit of money here for. 3 of those cost $3,750 to put those casings in so that the irrigation could be replaced over there. And another thing, if you're looking at the stage, to the west side of the stage, there's a planter box that has a bunch of things in there. That was supposed to be sprinkled. It has never worked right since 2 months after they put it in, apparently. The other half of that $7,500 was to fix that, go in and put a new route into that planter bed with all of them functional. We've already approved the $250,000, so I just wanted to make sure if I wasn't spending money that you didn't know about, or still that the total of this now will be $149,000, and we spent roughly $60,000 on the pavement, so we're still under that $250,000. I just wanted you to be aware that we're spending $7,400 more on the irrigation than we said we were when I brought that contract before you. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Trust you with it.
Yeah, just want to, I like to be transparent if at all possible. Next one on my list that I wanted to highlight for you all was the Alt Park Valley Trail restoration. We're closing in on final plans for that. We have a new grant writer on staff, as you all know, Kara, who is helping us utilize some monies for the best purpose possible. So that being said, you know, we have a $350,000 grant for Alt Park, which was meant to be split between the playground, which is in design as we speak, and trail master planning and or restoration of the park system.
Was this the grant that the Alt Park group received?
Yes. So we're hoping to use half of this, Commissioner, roughly, maybe less if we, bid this correctly, to restore about a 200-foot section of this trail with riprap. All of that design is what you see in the packet here. Very simple. We're basically just bringing in rock and putting in some under drains to keep the top of that from being consistently wet. As you see in that picture right there, that whole trail right there is wet just to the surface because the spring action from the slope behind you just keeps it charged and keeps it wet. And then people walk across that and it just beats it to death like a horse path. So the goal of this is to put all that water 2.5 feet below the surface, but still not flood those pipes that you see shown in because the water level in the creek is too high. So basically we're draining everything underground to keep the surface dry, just like you do a roadway. I'm trying a couple things with this one because it's cheap and I can. We're gonna put some parking blocks and everywhere I walk now, if you get a slope over 5 or 6%, you'll see on one side of a trail, a gravel trail, a wash, which gets 7 or 8 inches deep pretty quick if you've got a lot of water. We're gonna take some prefabricated parking blocks, the same thing you see everywhere in every parking lot, has 3 different rebar ties, and put those perpendicular to that flow, a little bit under the surface, as you see there shown. Basically just to try to stop that. So if it cuts into the surface, you're only gonna get down to the top of that block and the water will hit right there. There'll be a pipe right in front of that that drains all that water out into the creek. This is a little bit of a pilot project that adds maybe less than $5,000 to the cost of this overall project, but it allows us to test something because we have several different areas like this that have steep slopes. Stanberry is another one that if this works, potentially we're going to use something like that over there. So trying a couple innovative things, hopefully here to restore this. Just letting you all know why I mentioned Carrot and the grant dollars is initially we had this to go through our stormwater restoration contracts, which we have 4 folks that can just come in. They already have line items, bid items set with the city every single year. We can bid those without a lot of detail on this end. For this project, and because of the grant dollars we want to use, we may have to go a different route and do an invitation to bid, to put this out to bid publicly so that we have the maximum fairness across how people get to bid this. That is a condition of that grant. Kara's helping me with that language. We're deciding how to do that, but we hope to have this ready to go out for bid in the next month, one way or the other. Just showing you some concepts on that at the moment. That's what we think the scope will entail. Keeping you up to date on the project, we may spend well over $100,000 to fix. As you know, MSD is coming in potentially 2030. In the creek, they have a very big sanitary combined sewer there. They may come in to do some substantial work. So this is a pilot for us. We're keeping track certainly of all the money that we're spending in restoration of this creek bed, which is potentially affected by that combined sewer. So these dollars may be something that in the long-term project, not sure that they'll reimburse us for, but certainly we will get credit on any part of that match that we would have for things that we've done in temporary to sustain this because of that combined sewer. So that's why this is so important.
Is there a reason to hold on this project? Because
We pretty much can't hold the shallowest part of the trail now has went from 10 feet to about 7.5 feet in a year, just because of 3 big rains in the past couple of years. So we've lost feet even this year. It's important because it's a access road for MSD and it's a well-traveled trail, as you know, that connects Wasson Way to Observatory. It will wash out to the point where that trail is unsafe in the next year. We're trying to do this in the dry period at the end of this year so that nothing happens. We made it through this time, but we've lost a foot even in the past 2 months in the heavy rains that we've had. So something has happened upstream, and that is what Stantec is doing with MSD right now, is doing that whole study. How is the combined sewer underneath affecting the flow of the creek? And if they find that it is, and they will find that in some part it is, then what we're doing right now is in direct relation to that. And yeah, basically it will not last until 2030 when they plan to come in.
Great, thank you.
A quick one, the Mount Airy Stone signage repairs are complete. Just want to let you all know, I think that was completed last week. They look great to me. The new stuff looks shiny still, but hopefully, as you can see, over a year of rains, look as if it never happened. They did a great job. Happy to have a different mason or another mason in our toolkit as well. We're trying to build that out. We have so many projects like this across the system that have been waiting on masonry stuff. I was happy to see that these folks did a good job. So that's more than one now, at least, that we have to bid these things. The last one I wanted to highlight was something that Dan Jones brought to our attention. May 20th, he emailed me. And this is about Mount Echo Park. There's currently a softball field that hasn't been used for years, as far as I know. Kate, this maybe, yep, very last side. So there's the tennis courts at Mount Echo. Up and around the corner to the right is Matt Hood's satellite Mount Echo maintenance facility. As you can see, that's what we got from CRC. They are requesting permission to change this potentially from a softball field into a soccer field. I went back and said, how substantial are the changes? It is a change of use from what it is right now. So we wanted to bring that before you. Nothing's been done yet. They haven't even surveyed yet, but we wanted to let you know and make you aware that this is something that's on the table for consideration, at least. Jenny very wisely asked about parking. If we do soccer out here, that's a whole different ballgame. Potentially, I think the roads are wide enough to accommodate the difference in that. But we're at least letting CRC explore what that would have to take to level this out and make sure that's a soccer. Probably won't be a whole lot, but just wanted to make you aware that that change of use could potentially be coming before you in the next couple months as it's fleshed out. Those are all the ones I wanted to highlight. Yes, ma'am.
You know, I have to ask a question about the soccer field as opposed to the baseball field. You know, I can't let that slip. But I would ask this, I would ask Recreation to know, do they know how that will get used? Do they know that a group of soccer players will be coming there every Saturday, Sunday during the week?
Yes, ma'am.
Their practice. I would like to know that.
Dan alluded to that even at first and said that this is at a request of that. I think they use it somewhat like that right now, but this is hoping to more.
Because that makes good sense.
They're actually doing right now is they are taking over the hard surface course of the basketball and tennis courts and playing soccer inside there.
Oh, well, that makes good sense then. But I had to ask it. I had to ask
The
it.
community is certainly showing that they want
Yeah,
a soccer.
thank you.
Since your experience, all the soccer fields in the city are always full.
Yeah, I agree.
There's full. There's no place to play.
You all have any questions for me on any other project that I didn't cover specifically.
I do have one question. Okay, after you do all your work and you get the whole thing done and you've got the bid signed and all that's done, what is the time lag? You've got the money. What's the time lag when you go to get the money certified in the city? How much time is being spent on that little part of it before we can put the shovel in the ground?
It depends on the form of contract. For RFPs, it's a different process. So if we go out for a design contract like Stantec, Jennifer Harton mentioned California Woods, that contract we're working to stabilize all of that. That was an RFP. So that goes through a committee. Essentially, we created with other city entities, 5 folks that sit in on how that RFP is created. When everyone says yes from that committee, even, that you still have to write a work order to the city manager and 7 signatures and 2 memos, award recommendations, all of that stuff essentially takes between at least 30, and that's very, very optimistic, 30 to 60 days on things like that. For bids, like a public bid, like International Friendship Park, they bid that in April, late April and May, and they're still working through form of contracts. So those, when it's an individual contract for a project of $3 or $4 million, sometimes once everyone says yes, and even on the bid, then they start working on the form of contract, and that can take 3 weeks through the legal services, and then goes through purchasing, which is Department of Economic Inclusion, accounts and audits, to the city manager's office if it's big enough, through Jason's office, certainly at first. It's every bit of 60 days, Mrs. Gasolini, in any situation. Even quotes, enacting a quote, it still takes, as fast as our folks are in finance, creating a Form 1 is something we do, and that's how we initiate. We're asking funds to be certified. We do that at P&D, and then we send that through Parks Finance, had to make sure it's funded correctly. Her team ensures that all that is entered correctly into the city finance system, and from that point, then it could potentially take whatever is on the workload of our purchasers. So 60 days is nothing, essentially. That's about what I think it is across the board
I
as
think
an
that's
average.
important for the public to know.
Sure is.
Because it feels like we move things at a snail's pace. And if there's some way to grease these wheels a little bit better, then our contracts wouldn't run out and we wouldn't have to pay more money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, just in the 21 months I've been here, I think we've seen, and now 2 years, I think just recently, 2 years Joel's been here, right?
2 in a month, I think.
Yep. We've seen an incredible improvement, and Hedda, not even 6 months yet. And we've seen incredible improvement in some of these processes. Joel set up that I got invited to on my first day, a biweekly meeting with purchasing that continues to this day. Even when he's on vacation, we have it anyways. Hedda now has added an additional, I think, weekly meeting on Fridays with purchasing. Purchasing has been much more responsive to all of our requests and our help with stuff. Things are moving quicker with law. We've just really improved the relationships throughout. Certain parts of these processes are part of the city, and I think, as I think you're alluding to, there's definitely ways they can improve that. But I think a lot of the day-to-day process paperwork, keeping our eye on the ball and making sure that we have good relationships with the other side, so that when they have questions, they don't let them sit, but they ask them right away. Those things are really improving. I say it all the time, but we want to be every department's favorite department. And I think we're at least making headway there. I've gotten a couple of department heads to repeat that back to me. So we're at least trying to make some headway and improve these processes and minimize that, any sort of a lag that's certainly on our side, but also hoping other folks see our stuff and are excited to work with us.
We have a running Excel, pretty rudimentary, but it really helps. As at any given time, we probably have between 15 and 20 open jobs that are in some form of what you just asked me, Mrs. Cassidy. From the Form 1, it comes from planning and design through finance. There's so many people that touch it. We have a running list essentially now, and the last person to touch that adds a paragraph of what they've done and what the next person's accountability is. So that is what we review in those meetings now. That's attached to our meeting invite. Everyone can click on it. It's on the cloud for the folks that are involved with that. Everyone is expected to update that, and it stops anything from just sitting for more than 2 weeks. We talk about every one of them every 2 weeks, any open money that we have. So.
Well, that cheers my heart to hear all this, because this is a real thorn in my.
Well, there's another issue, and this gets to the point of addressing the dog park as an example, but it's not the only example we've had. The city does not have a system in place to get competitive bids.
Correct.
It is unacceptable that we have gotten one bid for what we believe to be a $450,000 project. Because when we have a project that is this scale, there are a dozen contractors, small businesses, minority contractors, all the things that the city says they want to build more relationships with, yet we cannot. So we have got a scenario where we are not receiving competitive bids. And it puts us in a predicament where we get stuck and then we've got to go through a problem-solving process that puts us months behind schedule. So I don't know where the answer is in there, but if there's something that we can do from our seats to encourage a change in policy, a change in process, but we're getting the same one or two bidders on every project, and it is not a competitive landscape. And it's not offering opportunity to the very types of companies that the city says they seek to build new relationships with and cultivate. It's a very serious problem. And it's keeping our projects from moving forward.
Yeah, I agree.
So we would like to know what we can do to encourage.
You've given me some of what I needed already by giving me some administrative folks. And now that we have several of these, that is exactly what I'm teaching them to do. Instead of having no time to go out and having to rely on purchasing and a set of vendor codes, ensuring that we go through everybody in the city that are on those approved lists. And if they're ones we know that should be, trying to figure out how to add those folks to the list. I agree, Commissioner, this is the biggest problem. Invite them to bid.
Right.
We certainly have tried to be proactive in that when we can. The city I have some friends on the outside of this, as you can imagine, doing 20 years of engineering before this. Like, how do we get into this? It's crazy. The process sometimes it has to be gone through. Not, I won't say crazy, just saying there certainly is a process that needs to be gone through. And with all of the work on the private side, as you two probably know, certainly all of you know, there's so much that they don't want to deal with the hassles of waiting for the payment, no matter sometimes what we do. I agree that it's unacceptable and we have to do more of this. Just gonna have to make it easier to work with the city, but when there's so much work on the private side that they don't have to deal with the bureaucracy in some form or fashion, people aren't bidding.
Yeah, there's not as much work on the private side as there was though.
Correct.
People are hungrier.
When is that correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly. Some of these, we've already seen that correction. Some of them, like this one, apparently we haven't, but.
And I do think, if I may,
Please.
that they're in a way almost two separate issues. One, there is the framework that exists over dozens of years that's come around. Jenny Mobley had the misfortune of trying to socialize me to how city procurement works. And it is a long developed process. And I think Parks has made enormous strides and is working really well within that system. Your question I take to be, okay, how can that system be better? You know, we're doing as well as we can in the existing framework. Could we get a better framework? And I think that's a valid and important role for this body as commissioners in what connectivity we might have with the city administration or electeds to say, is there a way we can do better in this? Can we get a better framework? I think this team's doing a great job of maximizing that framework, but they still exist in that framework.
That's
So can the rules be updated? I don't know that they can, but I think that's a good thing for us to drive.
It's something that I thought the Futures Commission would address. That very statement can it be changed?
Fair question.
To encourage business.
Hmm.
And as far as I'm concerned, they didn't address it.
Be careful, I was on that.
For one person.
That's right, that's right.
Also, see this.
You're right.
We have added probably 7 or 8 contractors from the quote unquote norm in the past couple of years, up to and including the masonry folks. Some of those specialties, it's weird to work through with the city why we can and can't get specialty contracts. Why don't we have a mason on staff for DOTE, Parks, MSD when they do an outfall, all of those folks? Why can't we have one of those shared? Well, it's because in the city exists in the union, those job classifications. Things like that infuriate me because now I can't go out and get 4 people at a beck and call like I do for a stormwater project to just say, hey, Megan, you're on that list, do it. You know what I mean? Some of the things the city has very well. Geotechnical analysis, we've done 4 of those in the past 3 months because the city has a rotating list of those folks, those consultants that can do that. Getting the city to allow us to have more of those that are so important to parks, but maybe not as important to other entities. You know, not everybody needs someone to the scale of a Lithco for preservation and restoration of buildings. but Parks certainly does.
Right.
Those kind of things, at least if that's all we had to deal with on the individual contracts and could do some of the more commodity type things like fixing walls with the snap of a finger versus doing an ITB every single time. That's what, on my end at least, President, that's what I'm trying to figure out how to do. More of those term type contracts.
Yeah, we have at least a half a dozen very capable, small to mid-size general contracting firms that can handle 80% of the projects that you are bidding out. Yet we don't see them. And half of those that I just mentioned are Black-owned firms. This is what the city says they want to achieve, and yet we're not receiving any bids.
That is really important,
It's very important.
very important.
May I go down one more rabbit hole
Sure.
very quickly?
If only we were in city council seats right now, right?
No, thank you. Another opportunity in certain instances, not all of them based on scale or nature of the project, but in certain instances for certain projects, I know we've explored in the past and sort of have open discussions around the foundation or Red's Community Fund for rec. There are certain instances, not universally, but in certain spots, I think without writing a check that our friends at the foundation have to cover, I think that could introduce some expedited project flow as well. Again, not everywhere, but in isolated cases, I think that could be a great resource to further explore for quick hits from time to time.
Yes, sir.
That's how we're moving forward with the bicycle skills course, for instance, which we're about to talk about in the next action item. Because that funding is coming from the foundation, that'll allow us to select a vendor at the donor's request, which will speed a lot of things along. So that'll allow that project to move a lot quicker. So it's a perfect example of that. But again, part of our attempts to build trust and to build good relationships and to build good partnerships and be responsive and helpful is that, we're increasingly included in these conversations about how can things change. I've mentioned it before, it's complex and it's minutia, but they're doing a pilot project where they're going to allow directors to skip the entire RFP bidding process for personal services contracts under $50,000. So there's a very
Professional service.
professional, not personal, professional service
No
contracts.
personal, anything, right?
Professional service contracts. But the pilot project doesn't start till July 1, so forgive me. But for professional service contracts, we'll be able to do that on our own. And it's a little bit of a they're gonna give us some rope and see if we hang ourselves. But we have to make sure that we're keeping our eyes on the ball for minority owned companies, small women-owned companies, small businesses, and make sure that we're not just going out to big firms. And so that's kind of how we can get our hands slapped. But if we do a good job of that, they're allowing that to change. So there'll still be some forms we have to fill out. There'll still be some processes we have to undertake, but it should free some of that up. And the hope is that as we earn some of that trust as a city and all the city departments, that's kind of the beginning of expanding that out to other things. So
That's how we get agility, is empowering the front lines.
exactly.
What types of services do we regularly use that will benefit from that?
So that could be architectural services, engineering services. There's a list of about 8 to 10. It's not as much as I would like.
Special inspections sometimes, or if you have
Special
inspections outside.
But another one could be like a culture coach or someone to come in and do a culture assessment, strategic planning, that kind of stuff as well. Communications work. If we needed somebody to come in and help us with something for Rocky's team, there are things like that are on that list that we'll be able to do. There are some limits to it, but starting with $50,000, but it really could be a great asset to help us be nimble and be quick to do some things without going through a kind of a larger process. So.
Great. Well, and then it could free procurement up to work on some meaningful policy changes that can make the city more nimble in some of this bigger stuff we were just talking about. So. Sounds like if it all works, it'll all work.
It all works, it'll all work.
Don't break out in lives. It's gonna get better.
It is getting better every day. So
It
I
is.
already see it. It just takes, everything that you've said is hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
We're working towards, like, I have a person now that's just working in planner to put all of these projects in. And I promise you, as soon as she gets up to speed on those things, she's gonna be the one bugging people. Like, how can we move this document faster? Is there something we can do to do these faster? speed it up efficiency wise as much as we can in-house. And hope to help purchasing as they overhaul the whole system, as you just talked about. We will be the as much as we can, because it's frustrating to get half a bid on, projects that you've worked 3 months to deal with.
Takes a long time to move a large, slow moving ship. All right, let's keep moving along. Thanks for.
Thank you.
For those.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Thanks, Joel.
All right, let me see. What do I do with my agenda here?
Next up is Eric for the HR report.
Get my paper shuffled and I lose track of where we were. Derek. Good morning.
Eric comes bearing gifts.
Oh, yes.
No wonder.
Yes, so you mentioned that you liked my pen last board meeting, so I got you guys a pen along with some other goodies that you might like. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So you brought the presents.
Yes, I did.
Hey, right here?
Yes. Well, there's another one in there.
Oh,
Got the- Yes, the butterflies in space pen for this year's exhibit.
Okay.
Oh, here, did I take your bag?
No.
That was Susie's, you know.
I just got yelled at about having too much.
Oh, problem.
Yeah, go.
Fill that one up with dirt and a plant.
But
Wow.
Yeah,
really cool.
thank you. No problem. I do want to thank, Rich Cross, I want to remind everybody, Rich Cross also retired. But obviously retired before this meeting. We do have some pictures, but our CV team member that took them is out on vacation. Oh, no, I might have gotten into it.
It's at the end. Unless you can.
Due to his retirement being so quick, I wasn't able to get him the exact award that we got Jennifer Harden, but he got a nice award. He was very appreciative. So I'm excited.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's great.
He worked in our tree crew. He worked all over the park system as well, but with our tree crew for a long time. And he told some really great stories of like the 80s or I guess the 90s. And then he spent, I think, the last 10 or 15 years all working out of Mount Airy and kind of taking care of our West Side parks. So.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work for us and appreciate all the work he's done. You did some quick math last meeting, 120 years, but that hit home. So we did put a lot of time. I want to thank the CEB team and my HR team for helping us expedite. As you know, things can take a while to get them ordered, but we just got it in Jennifer's engraved like 2 days ago, and they really made it happen. So I just want to say thank you to those. Overall, we have about 157 full-time employees. Part-time, we are at 126. So we're getting close to 100 employees, where we usually average about 250. So we're doing really well as far as onboarding with the part-time employees this year.
And it's showing in the parks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And, even on the weekend, me and my son went down to the butterfly show, kind of worked with the workers, and they are just amazing. They're doing an amazing job at the conservatory. I will say that. And through that, we were able to find small tweaks we can do to make their job a little bit more comfortable. As I told you last meeting, we're working on employee engagement. And we got them reordered some little fans that they can have because it's 90 degrees right now. It's 100 at Chrome. So we don't think about that. They're working in those temperatures all day. And also they have cooling racks. They are very appreciative. So now that we have more staff, we're able to get out there and actually meet with them. For example, on the 10th, Jason, Jenny, and we had a employee social, staff social, where we just on the west side, we're going to all the different divisions. And it's open to all parks employees, but they really appreciate just talking to us, giving us their ideas about shifting schedules and stuff like that. So now we're really getting into the work, kind of building on making parks a great place for employees to work. So I'm very excited about the strides we've made in regard to that. We have some important appointments. We have Logan Lyons, labor on the West District, Carly Fetterman, labor in the East District, Christopher Lee, who is also a labor on the West District. And after we got this printed up, we got an accepted offer for our carpenter position in facilities, Rodney Gardner. All four of those will be on commission on the 26th. hopefully starting, if they get through EHS background check, around the 7th of next month. So we have a lot of movement onboarding additional employees, so we'll be around 290 employees once they're onboarded. As far as vacancies, we're gonna hover around at 15. You'll see some positions say on hold. That's just because we are looking at those classifications. We're making sure that those positions are actually appropriate. Maybe we may need to do an add delete to our table of organization. And just, we want to make sure we fill them right.
Thank you for explaining that.
Absolutely, because I know that'll raise flags, so I was ready to that. Right now, we are doing interviews for the maintenance crew leader at Water Nursery. They'll be working between Water Nursery and Cron Conservatory, kind of leading our horticulturalists. We have a service area coordinator at Waterfront, which will help with some of the events and event management. And the admin tech for Sheila Stump, who is also retiring for her replacement. So we kind of be proactive, hopefully get them in early and maybe double fill so that this person could learn while they're still here. As I said, part-time, we have over 1,000 applications now. And 126 part-time employees onboarded, and we still have about 10 in the pipeline who are, that means we've offered them, they're doing their employee health screening, just need to do background check and they'll be able to start work. So we may be over 300 employees within the next month. Posted positions, we still have those part-time posted positions because, as you know, part-time positions sometimes can be a revolving door because they may get a higher paying job, they may be in school. So we keep those posted to make sure our managers have a continued pipeline of great employees. So overall, we've processed over 121 applications or applicants who've come through the pipeline. 36 were not hired. That means they failed background checks or something like that. But 67 have been hired. 18 applicants are currently in the pipeline. So it's actually more than 10. If you look down East West Cron Natural Resources, from a part-time staffing perspective, we are 100%. We are adding a couple to the east, a couple of positions. We have more than enough applications to interview and fill those as well. Injuries, we have about 18 injuries. Some of those may be very minor. They get a scratch, we have to report it, even though we may just put a Band-Aid on it. So those numbers could be a little bit deceptive. But in regard to injuries, we have our Parks Academy, our Parks Safety Initiative that Sherry in the HR division is heading. She has had a lot of meetings with risk management and our department to revamp hundreds of job hazardous analysis to make sure that we are prepared and preparing our employees for potential hazards. So we're really aggressively trying to make sure that we keep our employees safe. So I don't want you to look at that number and get nervous because we're doing pretty good.
If I may add, it did catch my eye, and I was running math, 6-point-some%, that seems. Is there any context as to other city departments that might have some similar worker? I just don't have any context for the number and in the
Average, probably over 20, around 22 number departments. Like I said, I think I'll have to refine this next time to kind of categorize what the injuries are. So you have perspective on what's serious and what may be minor, but we want to report it because a scratch can progress to like an infection later. So we have to report that.
And the city is probably going to have a more rigorous reporting requirement for what would be comparatively minor injuries.
Well, absolutely.
Might be accustomed to and other. But yeah, either historically, we had 15 last year and we have 18 this year, or either historically or other departments, some sort of context might be helpful. You correctly ascertained that'd be not an eye-popping number, but it's an eye-raising number, and I don't think the reality is as dramatic as the number sort of would indicate. So,
and you're probably present when they had a very robust safety program. Parks Academy in general, where they trained employees more. We had internal managers leading some of those trainings, and we're just trying to work up to that. It took them years to get there. So just small incremental changes as we partner with other departments. We're also sitting with recreation to see how they're running their safety committee. And we're looking at water because they have a lot of money. We're just looking at what can we do without the money, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I remember a few meetings back, you mentioned like our injury numbers percentage compared to other departments is, it's not that small.
Yes,
Other departments like high, so yeah.
I mean, we're in the summer. All the departments are getting busy and some of those big, larger departments are naturally going to have more injuries. So,
Yeah.
in general, our managers do a really good job. They have something called toolbox talks in the mornings to cover things that may have happened. So they really do a good job. I just want to be aware of what they're doing and find ways to maybe improve. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I sure do like this report, the way you do it.
Okay, thank you. We'll continue to improve on it, to add those changes that you want in regards to how we compare to other departments, historically, how we compare also. Thank you. No problem.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Please.
No problem.
All right, Jason.
So next up is grant applications for some grants from the Parks Foundation. Two relatively easy ones. As we were talking about earlier, that we were moving forward with skills course in Mount Airy in partnership with Cora and the foundation. Joel was talking to me earlier about how the surveying's all done and we're starting to put that together. We set aside in January of 23, $140,000 towards this project. And now this is $110,000 from the foundation and Cora that has been raised, both of them holding on to some of it. That'll all come to us to help fund that project. So that's a simple one. And then the next one up is $71,000 for programming at Crone. This is programming it's a fund that gives us money for programming every year. And it helps us put on all the amazing stuff that makes the butterfly show or all the various shows really sing.
We haven't talked about the bike skills course in a while. Can you give us the status?
The status is that we're moving forward with it. And so we have some funds set aside for an accessible trail that will go back to the restroom and then also to refurbish the restroom that's there, the comfort station, and fix that up. Those funds are set aside separately. And then we'll have $250,000 towards the skills course. Where it sits now is that we've done the surveying to get with our new in-house surveying equipment, all that surveying has been laid out, which will guide some of the design for it. And then Cora is working with the last update I got was Cora was working with a bicycle skills course manufacturer that does design build on these things to get the plans from a couple of years ago, freshened up and ready to go. And then once those two things align, I think we have to get into the queue with them because they're scheduled several years out. Not several years out, but many months out in order to get kind of set up with them to build it. Yeah.
Sounds like they've got a procurement challenge too.
Well, I think what the skills, the building folks have is lots of business challenge, which I think they're enjoying.
Yeah, good for them.
You can add a little bit if you want.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Survey wise, we're trying to make this accessible all the way from the loop, area 23 back to the comfort station and potentially even back to the pavilion, very back to that open area. So
Right.
we've already done the survey there and laid out the alignment of that sidewalk such that we're either within ADA compliance at 5% or under 7% with proper landings. We've done that already. We may tweak that, but our critical path is ensuring that line and all the entrances into the comfort station, all the entrance down to that pavilion can be wheelchair accessible. We would give that line to the folks that are doing the design build stuff at Cora. We basically don't touch our line and 10 feet off of that. Then that lets them do the design build, knowing that we're already in compliance with the pieces of this that we want. So we're already done with that survey. Thanks to you all allowing us to buy our survey equipment. We can do that in-house now. Matt Schiller did that before he is taking a few weeks off for a little one right now. So the survey is already done and we're working through actually building out the sidewalk and stuff right now. Chris McGee, when he's back in a couple of weeks, will then take what I do into the building and ensure that the restrooms are ADA compliant, sinks and all that stuff. And then they'll work through a refurbishment package, likely under Megan with that. Much smaller than a, say, lateral comfort station scale. This is on the $100,000 range, not $400,000 range for the comfort station itself, which is already funded, as Jason said. So our part, the critical path is just to make sure our infrastructure is accessible, and they can do the, give them the leeway they need to do the design build on the skills portion itself. So everything's moving forward.
When do you expect we'll have a skills force that people can start using?
As Jason said, I think the critical path on the Cora side is getting in the queue for that design build. I don't even know that what I'm doing right now is critical to give them, other than getting the grant money in place and getting on that queue. We will certainly have everything that we need to inform that process well ahead of when they're in the design. I think that's a year. Commissioner, from what I heard, once we get in that queue, it's a year from the design build side. We may be done with our stuff, and certainly could be done with the upgrades to the comfort station and all of that stuff much sooner than the skills force itself.
So
Next year.
you think it's 1 year to delivery from the point of entering the queue?
So
And what's the estimate range on them getting in the queue?
that's the transfer of funds that is a part of this, what you're considering right now.
Got it.
That can be.
So we're in the 2-month time frame of getting in the queue. So by fall of next year, we could reasonably consider having a bike skills course.
Hope so.
There's basic addition that we have to do in this meeting. Great. Sounds good. How exciting. I just want to thank Cora again, which I don't think, are you from Cora?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jason Reeser from Cora.
Oh, Jason Reeser from Cora, from Reeser Bicycles, right? Great. Well, thank you for your leadership on this. And of course, thanks for the partnership of the foundation and making this happen.
Thank you to the board for having faith in this facility and investing in it and making it accessible. ADA, we're working with different partners, like Bridges Adaptive and also Advancing Through. So it's accessible to people and it'll be right in neighborhoods where you make a big impact. Thank you.
It's great. I mentioned at one meeting many years ago that there was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, when there was not a single mountain bike trail in the city of Cincinnati. And this is not acceptable. We should not have to go to Kentucky to ride our mountain bikes, right? Or way somewhere else. So thank you for your leadership and efforts, and thank you to the foundation for this. I think we need a motion to approve receipt of these grant funds.
So.
A second,
Second.
and we'll roll call.
Or
Yes.
Vice President Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner McCallum,
Yes.
Commissioner Nair.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Jason, we're ready for your comments.
Excellent. Summer is always an exciting time. We've got a ton going on. First of all, we mentioned the Crone a little bit, but Butterfly Show, Butterflies in Space is off to a great start. We started about almost 2 months later than we did last year. Last year we started in March. This year we didn't start until May. Late April, early May. People are loving it. We got a couple pictures here that we'll bring up in a second. We've got several themed events that folks can sign up for, including breakfast with butterflies, Crone Discovery Space with scavenger hunts, crafts, and experiments for kids, Crone Game Night, and more. You can check out our website to find out more details. Mark House and his team are just doing another great job. It's always so creative. It's always something different. It's always the same. It's the Butterfly Show, but it's always a totally different experience every year, and just do a great job. We have an official conifer in the city of Cincinnati now. Last Saturday, Crystal Courtney and I joined by the American Conifer Society, Mayor Aftab Herval and Councilmember Mika Owens to ceremonially accept a Queen City conifer. So what you're seeing here is a 30 or 40 foot tall tree that is a new varietal that was identified. It's next to the maintenance garage in Spring Grove Cemetery. It is the Ginkgo bilboa Queen City, which is the varietal. It was officially sanctioned and approved by the American Conifer Society, and then Mayor Herval made it our official conifer. They propagated it, doing a cutting and then attaching it to a root system. to grow a conifer that's about 4 foot tall that we will be accepting. So that was what our gift was to Park System to be planted. We're gonna plant it at the Mount Airy Arboretum this fall. You don't want to plant trees right now because it is 100 degrees outside, as we've talked about. But we were on hand to talk to a bunch of folks and to meet the folks from across the country, to learn a whole lot about conifers, propagating and cuttings and all this really interesting stuff. But we also, like, when Crystal and I went out there on this day, we got a tour. We saw some amazing old trees in Spring Grove that were just amazing.
When was this propagated?
So, like, the tree we're gonna get is like 7 years old. He's been growing it there. So there's a local forester that has been part of identifying this as slightly different than other ginkgos in the area. So he said it's like basically a mutation happens. This is very simplistic version of this, but he says you'll have a tree, and on the tree they'll notice a mutation. So one of the branches will be vastly different than the others. And since what they do is they propagate it. I wish Crystal was here. She's on vacation though, but I think that's
Like the simple version.
yeah, propagate it, which is they then remove that branch and then they attach it to a root system. And he explained the whole system to me. It's basically you attach it to an existing tree and it starts to grow, and you slowly cut away the existing tree to where that branch is now merged with the root ball, and you've created a whole new varietal, which is called a propagation. He's grown several of these. The biggest and most beautiful one, which I can show you a picture on my phone, but we did not get it in this deck.
So are we saying this is a unique genus? Am I saying this?
I don't know that part. That's why I'm using the term varietal, but I think that's what it is. It is slightly different. So
I do want the answer to that.
I will get that, yeah. Yep. But yeah, it is a slightly different varietal of the ginkgo tree. And it's funny, I was on a walk with my dog the other day. Turns out there's a couple of ginkgo trees, which I was able to identify after my week of ginkgo knowledge, that are right on Central Avenue by Parker Flats, kind of by your office as well, Molly.
If it is, I would like you to ask Mayor Aptab to also attribute a Latin name to this tree. Okay. Yeah.
May I suggest Ginkgoas cincinnatus?
What'd you say?
Ginkgoas cincinnatus?
There you go. That's how we've
Sounds
got
Latin.
it. Tell him.
Sounds Latin.
Tell him Commissioner Nyer has.
It might be that's what I was trying to say it right, but I think it's Ginkgo bilbao. And
Yes,
so I
that's
think that might be what it is. I don't know if that's the Latin name or not, but that's the, with Ginkgo bilbao, and then it was Queen City. Yeah. Okay. I will look into it.
That's exciting.
But yeah, so it's gonna be stored for 6 months, and then we're gonna get it in the fall or a couple months. We're gonna get it in the fall and plant it in the arboretum. Add to our amazing collection up there. Very cool stuff.
And a ginkgo is a conifer.
Yeah, it's a deciduous conifer. So it loses its leaves, but still reproduces by cone or.
Distribution of its seed.
Interestingly, there were 2 ginkgos they took us to see in Spring Grove Cemetery that are both over 200 years old. They're right next to each other, and they flower or put out seeds on alternating years, which could be a total coincidence, but it certainly makes you think that that's kind of proof that they talk to each other and
They
they
do.
kind of worked out a system. And so it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Next up, Best of the West. So Rapid Run Park won the Best of the West Award for fitness trails by Cincy Magazine. So it's great to see this beautiful West Side Park get some love. Our team in the West, led by Matt Hood, working out of Mount Airy, just do an amazing job taking care of this park, keeping it looking good all year long. So
Fabulous.
very cool. Green Space team, as you guys know, Anna Ullman and the Green Space team just do an amazing job. I think they just completed the second planting of 3 this year. But just everything looks so good all across the city, and they just do a great job. These are some photos from the planting that was at Fountain Square recently, always just in full bloom. It's fun to see the stuff that goes on over the highway as those gardens over Fort Washington Way. They plant them, and there's like, you can see the 150 plants or so. And then by now you can kind of see some dirt. And by the time we get to playoff run, it's just going to be covered in flowers, and they're just overflowing. It's just amazing what they do. Pride in Parks. So June is Pride Month across the country. And once again, we're celebrating Pride with our Parks team. Last year, we marched in the parade for the first time ever. And the team was really excited to do that. We've got some t-shirts if anybody's interested, although we're running out of some sizes. But the parade begins at 11 a.m. We're meeting at 7th and Plum. If anybody's interested in walking with us, shoot me a text and I'll come find you and get you over to us. But it's a really fun event. We always march with some different groups in the city or in kind of the same area we are too, but really, really awesome. There's an event called Preservation in the Park that our friends at the Preservation Society do every year. It happens at 5:30 on, I believe it's Tuesdays. Yep, every Tuesday throughout the summer, or once a month throughout the summer. It's Tuesday, it's like the third Tuesday. That happens at Washington Park on the patio. It's a super fun event. They always have really interesting speakers. But coming up July 16th, our own naturalist, Michael George, who works at the Trailside Nature Center in Burnett Woods, is going to give a lecture on the history of our park system dating back to the 1907 Kessler Plan. So it should be really great. My wife is an architect, so she was the one that told me about these and started dragging me to them. But it's awesome. You hear all kinds of fun stuff about our park system, other parks. One week was all of the steps of Cincinnati and all of the amazing steps from Springer Steps, which is a great organization. So just a really cool event, 5:30.
What's the date?
Tuesday, July 16th at 5:30 in Washington Park. And we'll be sending this list of events out to you.
Okay, it's not on here.
Okay, well, it's not, so it's bizarre to get into the weeds of it. We do have to get better at this, but it's an event that, since it's in Washington Park, it's managed, the event permit is managed by 3CDC. So our team's trying to get better at capturing those and making sure they appear on our website, but there's a little bit of a hiccup in how those are processed.
I'm sorry, which one is the history of the park system?
So that is Preservation of the Parks, Tuesday, July 16th at 5:30 in Washington Park.
Oh, it's in Washington.
Yep. It's at the patio there. 4th of July fun. So you can see all of our events here. We've got 3 different firework events that are in our parks. First, starting off with the All-American Birthday Bash. That's Saturday, June 29th from 2 to 10 at Sawyer Point. It's going to include music, food, a car show, and then it ends with fireworks. We then have the All-American Block Party and fireworks in Inwood Park. That is July 3rd from 5 to 10. And then we've got the Alt Park fireworks, which are back. Councilmember Seth Walsh and a bunch of active community members raised over $35,000 through the foundation, our friends again, to help us put on the fireworks. Going to be a great show. We're going to plan them and organize them this year. And so it should be a great event. I'm going to attend for the first time. I always go north to my family in Dayton, but this year I'm going to hang around and see the fireworks in Alt Park. So we're really excited. Got to thank presenting sponsor, former park board president and board member for a long time, Brad Lindner, is once again back as the UDF is back as the presenting sponsor. So just really great. Obviously this was in a little bit of an unstable place this year, but we brought it back and we're really excited to keep it going. And we're hoping that we're creating a partnership and a model that will last for years to come. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the North Side Music Festival, which is happening all over from Thursday through Saturday at Hoffner Park. The Rock and Roll Carnival is the proper. I was trying to come up with it, and I tried to stall for a second. It didn't come to me. The Rock and Roll Carnival, the 4th, 5th, and 6th at Hoffner Park. I'm going to try to make that this weekend too, which I've never been to either. So I'm really looking forward to it. So lots of fun stuff happening throughout.
That's not this weekend.
Not this weekend, but it's the 4th of July weekend, 4th, 5th, and 6th of the 4th of July weekend.
Good time.
Yep. So exciting stuff.
Repeat again for me, July 2nd, Owl's Nest.
Oh, and I skipped right over that one. Okay. Yep, I did skip right over them. I got so excited about the Kessler Plan. July 2nd is our community meeting, community input session with anybody that wants to come see our plan for Owl's Nest. So we've been working with KZF over the last year and a half to develop this plan. We've had a bunch of community input sessions, but Tuesday, July 2nd, from 6 to 7:30 at the Evanston Recreation Center. We're going to have some boards and we're going to get a presentation from KZF to show the plan. There's some images in your packet of kind of where we're at. The original plan was just to take care of the building and to restore that building, which hasn't been in use in decades. And that plan was coming along. And then we heard from the community and the foundation. They were like, well, if we're going to raise money for this park, why don't we look at the whole plan? So we then over the last year have developed some additional plans for that. And what we found from the community was it wasn't anything, they weren't looking for a full remodel. People really like Owl's Nest. They were looking to see some plantings at the entrances that might match each other. And so it would kind of give a little bit of connectivity between the two entrances. Obviously, the Fairfax side looks very different than the Madison side. Accessible trails, and then lighting was the other key thing that they were looking for, and some automatic gates at the parking area and of the Pogue Avenue entrance. So we've gotten a bunch of great feedback. This is kind of like we're at end times. Everybody so far has been kind of shaking their heads and saying this is where we want to go. So we're gonna have one final input session, and then another survey that we'll put online that will be an opportunity for folks to offer comments. So it won't be a like, prioritize this, what would you change? It would be more like, here's the presentation, what we're doing, what do you think about it? Kind of where we got to at the end of the dog park outreach, where we'd kind of done the stuff, we'd learned, we'd made some modifications based on previous input, and then we're like, all right, here it is, any final suggestions that can help us finish this thing out. The goal will be to have those plans finalized with KCF by the end of July. And at that point, we'll have schematic drawings with really good estimate, again, as best as they can do. That will then be able to fundraise against over the next year or so in order to come up with kind of what the funding plan will be and when does that fit into our build cycle. Exciting stuff. It's really, again, I mentioned earlier with Centon and with the District 5 police headquarters that we turned into our Ludlow Operations Center, but it's another opportunity to take a historic building that has been undercared for decades, and it's been allowed to fall into kind of a tough spot, and to bring it back to its glory and really make an awesome community asset that will once again hopefully work to connect these two communities.
Jason,
Super excited. Oh, great.
We're meeting next week with Julie Crawford, a structural engineer, who has done a lot of the work as a subcontractor for KCF, to ascertain the existing condition of the building. I mean, sure, there's nothing that we can't do in-house to preserve what we can. So there are a lot of facades that are showing stress, brick facade, they fall off. If we can ensure those things to ensure that as KCF designs this over the next year, it's preserved at least in the current condition that it is. We're asking for that meeting next week to ascertain those best management practices, to save as much of it as we can, even though it's closed off to the public, not make more of a mess for ourselves a year.
Yeah.
It's fundraising is complete.
Yeah, about 2 months ago, we had to close it off to the public and we have a fence up around it because we're seeing increased stress on it, increased water damage. And it's just, I mean, it's in a really rough spot and it's gotten worse over the last couple of years. So we've decided to limit access to it so it can't get any worse. We don't want to see anything fall off and hurt anybody. But we want to shore it up as quickly as we can.
Great. So you'll give us those events that are not on the Cincinnati Parks event calendar. I'm looking forward to seeing what advances on this Al's plan. Obviously, it's gorgeous. I mean, this is really well designed, and I know for me, it creates a lot of excitement about what this could be. I also blink dollar signs when I look at it. So it'll be important for us to understand where this is going from a budgetary perspective. And then as we get into this, I would definitely like to understand from you what the ongoing costs of maintaining a park at this level are, because unless or until we have a parks levy, when we're making this kind of installation, there's got to be a plan for keeping it that way. So there's got to be an endowment plan, and I think something that's improved at this level. That's one comment I have. And then we had talked about releasing the update to the schedule for this meeting. Do we have that, or is it coming?
The plan is to release, or to not release, but I guess talk about and kind of go over an updated plan of work and 3-year forecast at the July meeting. Okay. So we've had a couple of preliminary meetings, which has led us down some rabbit holes of, okay, so now if we're going to do these, let's make sure we have the money for them, because some of these next projects, it might not even be super expensive, but we want to make sure we have the dollars there. And so begun to dig into some of these capital projects to see what we can free up, what we can dedicate to stuff, and start to line up what those next projects are. We've also seen some projects pop up. I've talked to a lot of you about the Bramble Park Trail that we knew we had a grant for, but really didn't know about the design. Nobody that now works here had been part of thinking that through or had really received a presentation from the community. We met them on site within the last month and kind of understood what the vision was for it. And are understanding better. This is another example. We have a grant writer on staff. She reached out to ODNR and we're like, what are our outstanding grants? And we found out they were pretty mad at us for not working on this, which again, we didn't really know much about. But so that's gonna be another one that would be able to fit into the schedule, hasn't appeared before. I just wrote down today, I don't think we've got the Alt Park Valley Trail on the calendar. It's not gonna be an incredibly expensive project, but it's one we wanna make sure we add to the calendar. I think I said, when we did the first one, that there were a lot of big projects in the first year of the first 3-year forecast. There were a lot of big projects, but then there were a lot of smaller projects. But then past that, there weren't a lot of smaller projects. So we're doing that process now of adding those new smaller projects in. So again, we'll see the big projects, biochar, Senton, Ted Berry International Friendship Park, Smale Lot 23, but then we'll see some of these smaller projects as well.
So when will we see the update to that?
The plan is July,
July?
Yep.
Okay.
but we want to make sure it's complete, well thought out, but the plan is July.
And then my final question, I'll waive my question on the this month, give you a break.
I was ready for it, but.
Well, we'll take any response to that too, but I wanted to ask, we had on the last one and we received some comments about this, that we were gonna kick off planning for Inwood in second quarter. I mean, we still have another week or two, so it's not too late, but first question is, what's our thinking there? We do have some funding, probably not enough. But when you think about a design for that park, is this exercise that you've done with Owl's Nest similar to what you're anticipating doing with Inwood?
So a couple of things. One is that, and I think that's going to be one of the challenges as we move forward, and one of the things that we will want to have a conversation around as we head into this next 3-year forecast is that, so we've talked about 4 major projects. We're still closing out some projects I think we hoped we were closed on, and we're adding in these small projects. But from a funded, not funded priority projects, we've got, and this is off the top of my head, but we've got Owl's Nest, which will at least have a plan, but will be a project that we'll look to do the next 2 years. We've got funding for Glenway Park, which is coming along. Again, thanks to our partners at Foundation, thanks to our partners at City Council, thanks to some local donors to help make that happen. That's coming along. That'll be a smaller one, but still several $100,000. We've got funding for MLK Park, and we're working with the Foundation for Seasongood Square. We've got Inwood, and then we've also got the Alt Park Pavilion and Crone. So we've got a lot of big kind of planning projects that we got to dig into. Some of those on the schedule, we're like, yep, once we get through some of these things, we'll get to digging into those. And now we got to determine what's the pace we can start to dig into those, because each one of those is kind of a big thinking exercise, a big time exercise to start to dig into them. And so one of the things that we're going to have to do as we head into July, and then one of the things we're going to look for some insight from you guys on is what pace should we do those? What are the order we want to start to dig into those? Because each one of them is going to be a community input session. Each one of them is going to be a lot of feedback. I believe the current thinking with Inwood is that we would seek a park designer to kind of bring us a plan. And then that design process would involve some community outreach sessions that are akin to Owl's Nest, but might be even a little bit more like, what could this be? Because I think we're thinking that Inwood could be a little bit more of an extensive refresh than Owl's Nest, where it was like, keep it kind of how it is, add some elements and take care of this building. Inwood could be a little bit more of a broader, like, let's come up with a really cool master plan for this park. So I think the goal from talking to Joel's team was we were hoping to solicit some park designers to help us with that, potentially from across the country, get some new and people we haven't worked with before, and really try to get some competition there to find a really good partner to help us design that. I think that answers your question, but maybe in a long-winded way.
President North, I have a follow-up to that a little bit. We are working on an RFP already, just very similar to Owl's Nest, in my opinion. The level of quality that you see for that pavilion, what they've shown in restoration, is hopefully what I envision for Inwood, among some other things. As I don't know, it's been at least a year since I had a dedicated update on Inwood, but we know that there's some problems with the existing retaining walls that are down along the line there. Want to make sure that funding lines up with the expectation. We know the pavilion could cost, as you're about to see with Owl's Nest by itself, it could cost, depending on what you do with it, $4 million by itself. We don't have that certainly in the funding right now. Making sure we are utilizing what we need to do from a safety perspective first, and then enhancements beyond that is certainly important. But we do need some help in master planning. So Kelly, Denny, and I are working to start that process for an RFP to put that out for bid to see what is the most advantageous use of those funds as the project grows. But it will, in my mind, it certainly will be akin to Owl's Nest and fully finished by the time it's all said.
I think that can be part of our discussion too, as a group, is to think through, so we know we've got a retaining wall, we know we've got another entirely underused pavilion that hasn't been opened in forever. We've already done some improvements to the lake to get that, the drainage working on that, get that back, but then we've got kind of the open green space where we've got a lot we can do. There's a ton of invasive species up there along that hillside that we could get removed. There's a lot of features we could put in the park. So we could almost do it in phases, where we've got the retaining wall phase, we've got the pavilion phase, and then we've got kind of the open space phase. And what do we want to do with that open space? How do we want to redesign that? So maybe we can think about kind of how to prioritize those. With Owl's Nest, it was definitely restore the building, make the building better. And then are there other elements we could add? And it turned out there wasn't a ton that needed to be done because it was in relatively good shape. With Inwood, I think we have almost a clean palette in that it just needs a refresh, and there's a lot of energy around it. So I think, we're looking for insight and conversation about kind of how big do we want this to be, how grand how big is our appetite to fund it, and how grand is our vision for what we can do with it, and just what are the most important things.
Discussion, Phyllis, John, okay.
Nope,
I would
I'm
just
good,
ask-
thank you.
Jennifer, will you be at that July 2nd meeting of Owl's Nest? Oh, good. Okay, I think that's important.
That's something.
Phyllis,
Yes,
I think we heard you. Any discussion comments to share?
no, I don't have anything. I want to thank the foundation. We've been working on a CPAC for the park across the street. And I think it's coming along well. And the foundation was kind of leading that project. And I just want to thank them for their efforts in getting that going. And we've got a good start, and hopefully it'll produce some great events for the park. And we've got a lot of energy around the park. And so that's really exciting for the members of our community in our building.
Thank you, Phyllis. Well, with that, we will announce our next meeting date, which is July 18th at 9 a.m. And if there are no further comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
do we need to roll call that?
Sure.
Let's roll call it.
President Norris.
Yes.
Vice President Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Castellini.
Yes.
Mr. McCallum.
You might be muted, Phyllis.
yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.